After the storm, Yagi, painful memories and lingering hope intertwine. Episode 18 reveals a deeper mystery. Will the seed of hope awaken a new sense of faith in Tu Tien's heart? Just after sunrise, the roads were still slick with rain from the night before. The air was thick with humidity, heavy under the lingering weight of tropical storm Yagi, which showed no signs of letting up. Jack rode his motorbike from the main construction site toward the road leading to the new bridge area. That section had already been cordoned off due to flooding and a minor landslide along the mountain slope. When he arrived, a team of workers was busy setting up barricades and warning signs. The water had risen quickly, washing away the surface layer of the road and eroding several sections of the temporary embankment. Jack took off his helmet and walked over to an older worker overseeing the crew. "How's it looking, Uncle Tam?" he asked. "The water came fast. We didn't have time to block it off last night," the man replied, voice tired. "A few households across the bridge are isolated, but thank God no one's hurt. Now we just wait for the water to recede." Jack nodded slightly, his eyes scanning the entire area before pulling out his phone to take photos of the damage to send back to the office. While adjusting his camera, he overheard foreign voices nearby. He turned to see two unfamiliar men, soaked backpacks slung over their shoulders, trying to speak to some locals in a mix of English and broken Vietnamese. One of them walked up politely and said, "Hello, we want go to Ha Giang, but road blocked." Jack stepped closer and replied in simple, careful English, "Yes, the road is flooded, very dangerous now. You should not cross." The other man pointed at some motorbikes turning back, then shrugged. "No hotel. Where sleep tonight?" Jack looked at them for a moment. Their eyes were tired, worried. They weren't being a nuisance, just looking for shelter in a strange land during a storm. After a few seconds of thought, he smiled and pointed toward the forest. "I have a farmhouse. Quiet. You can stay tonight." The two men looked at each other in surprise, then nodded quickly. "Yes, thank you so much." Jack motioned for them to wait, then turned back to the crew to give a few instructions about securing the site. Before leaving, he told the supervisor, "Keep this road fully closed for now. I'll call in reinforcements later." On the way back to the farm, 3 motorbikes turned onto the red dirt road, still muddy and scattered with debris. Under the dull grey sky, Jack led the way, with the 2 Australian travellers following close behind, never expecting that in the middle of a stormy day in a foreign land, a stranger would offer them refuge with open arms. That afternoon, the sky remained overcast and the wind carried the scent of damp earth and a lingering chill through the trees surrounding the farm. Jack led 2 Australian travellers, Sam and Henry, into the small courtyard in front of the thatched house. Tu Tien was crouched by the porch, tending to the fire. When she looked up and saw Jack returning with 2 unfamiliar faces, her expression was filled with surprise. Jack gave her a simple nod and briefly explained that the 2 were travellers stranded by the storm and would be staying the night. Tu Tien wiped her hands on her apron and walked over with a gentle smile, greeting them in simple English. Sam and Henry returned the greeting politely, their faces soft with quiet gratitude. At first, the atmosphere was a bit awkward due to the language barrier, but it didn't take long for the warmth and humility of their hosts to put everyone at ease. Jack pulled out his phone to open Google Translate, while Sam used a notes app to draw little pictures and type in key words. Laughter broke out around the porch as they chuckled over the awkward but endearing translations. As dusk settled in, the group began preparing dinner together. Henry offered to help and was assigned to catch a chicken with Jack, while Tu Tien guided Sam in picking vegetables, boiling corn and setting up the meal outside. The courtyard came alive with laughter, the sound of clucking chickens, boiling water, and the occasional squeal of surprise. It was the kind of scene that felt both unfamiliar and deeply familiar at the same time. Dinner was simple but warm. A plate of boiled chicken with salt, pepper and lime, golden corn, steamed vegetables and a few leaf-wrapped forest cakes. Under the glow of the oil lamp, the 4 of them sat cross-legged on a worn-out mat, passing dishes and sharing stories through broken sentences and honest smiles. Sam talked about his cross-country trip through Vietnam. Henry shared the odd and wonderful things they had seen in the mountains. Jack mostly listened, glancing occasionally at Tu Tien with a softened gaze as she quietly tried to follow the conversation, smiling. Pouring more tea, Tu Tien turned to Sam and said, "Hope tonight. Good memory." Sam nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, very good, very warm. Thank you." She turned away, her heart unexpectedly light. In the middle of stormy days, this humble home had become a place of shelter, not just from the rain, but a space where human connection quietly bloomed. And in that moment there were no guests, no hosts, only kindness, laughter, and a shared meal that brought comfort in the heart of the storm. Night fell quickly after a damp grey day. In the small kitchen, the glow of the oil lamp cast soft shadows on the bamboo walls, a strangely warm scene amidst the stormy weather. After dinner, Jack stepped out onto the porch to call his mother, speaking quietly so as not to disturb anyone inside. His voice was low and steady. "I'm fine, Mum. I'm at the farm. 2 foreign travelers got stuck on the road. I'm letting them stay the night. Don't worry, I'll text you the address later." On the other end, his mother simply replied, "Good, as long as you're thinking things through." When Jack returned, he saw Sam and Henry crouched near the kitchen, amused by a few baby chicks nestled in the warmth beneath the counter. Tu Tien sat nearby, hugging her knees, her expression more relaxed than usual. Jack walked over and sat next to her. No words were exchanged, but the look they shared said enough. They were both quietly soaking in a rare sense of calm after a chaotic day. Henry broke the silence with a clumsy sentence. "In my country, chickens never in house like this." Tu Tien chuckled, covering her mouth, then replied with a grin, "Here, chickens are part of the family." The group burst into laughter. Sam pulled out his phone to snap a photo, then gave a big thumbs up, his bright face silently saying, "Tonight is perfect." Later that night, Jack prepared sleeping space for the 2 guests upstairs in the stilt house. It was simple, a worn mattress, a thin mosquito net, but tidy and clean. Tu Tien handed over a warm jacket and a bottle of water. Sam thanked her with his eyes, while Henry bowed and said each word carefully. "You are very kind. Thank you so much." Once they were settled, Jack and Tu Tien sat again by the little stove. She added a log to the fire, her hands dusty with ash, but she didn't bother wiping them clean. Her eyes stared into the darkness outside, where pools of floodwater still reflected the flickering light. Her farm was likely still submerged. Jack spoke gently. "Tomorrow I'll go check the area. If the water's down, I'll take you back." She didn't reply right away. After a pause, she turned to him and said softly yet clearly, "It's okay, I'm used to it, but today was nice. I didn't think during a storm like this I'd get to sit with strangers, eat, hear them talk about faraway places. They see beauty in my country, and I'd forgotten it was there." Jack didn't say anything else. He simply stayed beside her as the fire flickered between them, a small, steady flame, enough to remind someone sitting nearby that they weren't alone in the middle of the flood season. After 3 days of relentless rain, the sky finally cleared this morning. Jack, along with Sam and Henry, returned to the collapsed bridge area to assist the rescue teams and support the local villagers. Though Tropical Storm Yagi had passed, what it left behind was far more devastating than anyone had anticipated. The entire region looked as if it had just emerged from a war zone. The floodwaters had swept away everything: homes, livestock, pens, fields, and even the familiar roads, now nothing but a vast stretch of mud. In some places, the water had risen all the way to the roofs of second-story homes. Entire villages were buried in mud and debris, the boundary between house and mountain now blurred beyond recognition. Motorbikes were half submerged in thick sludge, utility poles snapped in two, power lines tangled and collapsed like broken webs. The air was thick with the stench of garbage and decaying animals carried along by the current, making it hard to breathe. Jack stood in silence for a long time beside a stream that had only just receded. The muddy current still churned with debris and rotting wood. Life vests clung to bamboo stalks along the banks, caked in mud, silent witnesses to a night of survival. Sam's usual smile had vanished, and Henry quietly took photographs, not to share, but to remember. They didn't ask questions, they simply got to work, joining the volunteer teams ferrying stranded villagers across flooded roads in small boats. Jack showed them how to keep balance, then helped an elderly woman through waist-deep water. Her hands trembled as she held onto him, but she still managed to smile and whispered, Thank you so much." The deeper they moved into the storm's core, the more heartbreaking the scene became. A wooden house leaned on its side, revealing inside a small altar that had toppled, the ancestral photo water-stained and peeling. A man knelt in the muddy courtyard, screaming his wife's name into the wind as it whipped through the torn metal roof. No one approached. Everyone understood. There are wounds that words cannot touch. As evening fell, Sam and Henry packed their things to leave. They shook Jack's hand, their eyes full of sorrow and quiet gratitude. Sam said softly, "If it weren't for you, I don't know what we would have done these past few days." Jack nodded, holding back emotion. "Safe travels. Vietnam welcomes you, even in the storm." As the sound of their motorbike faded up the muddy hill, Jack remained, eyes fixed on the horizon. Amid the wreckage and thick mud, one truth settled clearly in his heart. It would take a long time to rebuild all that was lost, but the humanity they had witnessed would endure. Early in the morning, Jack brought Tu Tien to a safe shelter, then turned back toward the disaster site. The mountain pass now looked like a war zone. Excavators roared non-stop, hurling mud into the air like crashing waves. Villagers waded through murky water, hauling bags of drenched belongings. Jack navigated around the worst flooded areas to rejoin his team of workers, clearing the main road into town. By midday, he returned to pick up Tu Tien. She stepped out wearing purple boots, carrying rubber gloves and a face mask. Without saying much, they set off again. Together with volunteer teams, they began from the main road, where the mud reached ankle deep, covering manholes and flooding homes. Everywhere was chaos, piles of garbage, animal carcasses, shattered bricks and splintered wood. Shops once bustling now stood in ruin, shelves toppled, refrigerators overturned, rooftops half torn away. Homeowners stood dazed in their doorways, eyes hollow, as if they couldn't grasp how a lifetime's work had turned to sludge in just 3 days. An elderly woman sat on the front steps clutching a rusted tin box. Inside were an old photo of her late husband and a few framed certificates of her grandchildren. She didn't cry, only stared blankly at the crowd passing by, mumbling, "The flood came, the house is gone, but we're still here. Still here is enough." Jack shoveled heavy clumps of mud from the floor of a small grocery store. Tu Tien swept the dirty water outside, her hands trembling from the cold. Whenever she stopped to catch her breath, someone else would take her place, switching shifts seamlessly. No one needed to say much. Here, everyone understood one another's pain. Tu Tien saw the villagers toiling to clean what was once their peaceful homes, now nothing but ruin. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly and went back to scooping mud as if nothing had happened. As evening fell, rays of sunlight filtered through a haze of smoke and dust. Aid groups arrived with bottled water and loaves of bread for the volunteers. Jack and Tu Tien sat under a tattered awning, each holding a sweet roll and a bottle of cold water. She whispered, "If you have nothing left to lose, then there's nothing left to fear." Jack looked at her, said nothing, but quietly reached out to shield her from the sun. Amid the wreckage, among the pain still hanging in the air, they didn't try to forget. They chose to rise. Together, one shovel at a time, one step at a time, they began to rebuild, starting with the human spirit.
Tiên quay trở lại nhà Chiến, mong tìm được lối nhỏ cho cô vào giữa bão tố cuộc đời. Khi vừa bước nhà, không khí lạnh lẽo đầy căng thẳng bao trùm mẹ chồng của Tự Tiên, giọng chua ngoa và ánh mắt quắt lên tiếng khinh miệt khi thấy cô trở lại. Cái nhà này không chứa chấp cái loại đàn bà như thế. Sự khinh miệt ấy mở đầu cho một cuộc tranh cãi gay gắt. Trưởng khôn trấn an đề nghị chia tài sản công bằng cho cô một phần gia súc như trâu heo gà để có vốn sống. Tuy nhiên Chiến, người chồng cũ, lạnh lùng tuyên bố cô ta đã ra khỏi nhà này, đừng có mong lấy bất cứ thứ gì. Lời nói của gã càng làm không khí căng tràn. Khi mẹ chồng hùa theo, lớn tiếng cấm đoán cả trưởng thôn và Tự Tiên. Dưới sức ép của gia đình Chiến, dù trưởng thôn cố gắng giúp đỡ nhưng cũng chỉ biết bất lực. Từ Tiên đứng đó, lặng lẽ nhìn chồng cũ và cảm nhận rằng từ nay mọi thứ đã chấm dứt, không còn mái nhà, không còn tài sản, không còn chút tình nghĩa xưa, chỉ còn lại nỗi đau. Chắc đắn quyết định chia ly với quá khứ, Từ Tiên siết chặt chiếc áo cũ kỹ, cúi đầu quay lưng rời đi.